What's going on, guys? It's Wade Fellin. My favorite dry fly, streamer, and saltwater rod for the past 6 years has been the Orvis HELIOS 3. This bad boy in a 5-weight in the F. It's so good. And this week, Orvis released the 4th generation HELIOS, claiming that it's 4 times better than H3. Today we're going to talk about 1, is it? And 2, does that even matter? And should you go buy it? I'm gonna give you my thoughts, and then we're gonna go find Dad for the definitive test of whether or not you should upgrade, or is H3 still the best fly rod on the market? So I fished a prototype of this sucker on the Missouri 2 years ago, and last spring, my wife actually fished the very first production retail copy out in Vermont. So what's the difference? We'll get to all that. First, let's talk about whether or not those differences even matter. Fly rods, golf clubs, skis, they've all come so far in the last 20 years. From flimsy fly rods, small golf clubs, long skinny skis, they've given way to fast graphite, huge drivers, and, rockered and shaped skis. It's easy to get caught up in the latest and greatest, and it's difficult to differentiate a simple rebrand from a meaningful rebuild. And even if you do identify a real rebuild, do you need it? Feel is completely a personal preference, and I firmly believe you should stick with what feels good and what you perform well with. If you're bombing it 275 yards down the middle of a fairway with a driver that looks like one of today's 3-woods, why would you need to learn a new swing with a microwave oven on a stick just because some golf pro says X company makes the best driver ever now? In the same token, if you're skiing Liberty Bowl at Big Sky on a pair of Rossignol 210 straight skis with bear trap bindings, it might be time to embrace a new design and give your hips and knees a break. The same goes for fly fishing. I grew up fishing the feeder streams of Southwest Montana with a sweet, slow, 2-piece Winston WT. So when I get a fast, Sage or the Orvis HELIOS D, I feel rushed and I end up hitting the water a little harder than I'd like to. I know some great fly fishers who swear by those rods, and they would probably collapse their loop if they tried a slower rod like I like. And since I've been fishing that rod for the last 6 years, I've had no interest in changing. I've played golf with the same Hogan Apex Pros since high school, and I've been skiing on fairly stiff, skinny skis with a small amount of rocker for many years, and I'm not gonna be changing those anytime soon. For me, what is the goal or objective here is really only part of the question. Yes, I want to get the ball in the hole in as few strokes as possible. Yes, I want to be in control skiing down a mountain. And yes, I want to get the fly to where the fish is so that I catch more fish. But more importantly, in all 3 activities, it's the feel that gives me joy. That pure 8-iron off the fairway that feels effortless, launches up and then dies and just falls at the pin. A bluebird corduroy day and the release out of a turn with a little tail pop that sends you into the sky and stops time. That's why I ski. And same with fly fishing, that progressive backcast where the rod flexes and sets you up for a perfect 35 feet, gentle but deliberate 10-foot leader turnover through a stiff Montana breeze to lay down a size 16 dry fly inches in front of a feeding brown trout. That's why I keep coming back. That's the point of all this. So when I saw a rising fish at lunch on a float trip with Dave Perkins from Orvis 2 years ago, I rather rudely grabbed his fly rod out of the gunnel of the boat without asking. I wanted to see if I could put the fly into a stiff breeze while we were sitting there having lunch. I'd been rowing, I wanted to cast. But as I took the fly off the rod, I was immediately taken with how light the rod was. And as I cast it, I was so impressed by how smooth it felt. So I peeled off a little line and I made a couple of casts, and I swear it felt like that rod was alive. It was kind of like that feeling you get when you just open it up out of a ski turn and you know that one little miniature mistake, you'll totally blow up and probably get hurt. But yet you feel comfortable and in control. You know you've got good boots, good bindings, and good skis that you've learned how to use. Well, I'd never used this rod, yet it carried line quickly and effortlessly. All I had to do was look where I wanted the fly to go, and it went there. I hooked the fish. I turned to Dave and I said, "What the hell is this?" He said, "Oh yeah, that doesn't exist yet, but it's a 4-weight. I said, a 4-weight on the Missouri? On an afternoon in August? Are you kidding me? I would have grabbed a 5, probably a 6 if I was packing myself. But this 4-weight was gorgeous. It actually reminded me of the progressive, patient casts I grew up with on the Little Wise River with my Winston WT. But it had the power I needed for a bigger river like the Missouri or the Big Hole or the Madison. And then last May, my wife and I visited the Orvis headquarters in Vermont. We toured the rod shop. We met the rod builders. We saw the rod that could not be named yet. It was super secret. We saw it as it was being built and carefully wrapped and finished by hand, by real people in the United States. And then we even snuck out for a quick float with the head rod designer, the father of the Helios fly rods. This guy literally came from nuclear subs to nano fly rod design and changed the entire game. We're getting ready to pack it up, head back to Montana, open our season, and Sean texted me, hey, I snagged a rod your wife's gonna wanna cast. So we met him at the boat ramp, and the proof is in the pudding. So what's changed? Sean and the team basically tore down everything about H3. They listened to all the criticism, they did the work to figure out what could be improved, where, and how, and then they built it back up. And in doing so, first and foremost, they created a rod that bends back and then releases its energy as it comes back to stasis in a straighter and more progressive fashion. What does that mean? That translates to accuracy and feel. So when I come back and then I come forward toward a target, if the rod's going like this as it's trying to release that energy, so is the line, and ultimately so is the fly. Now, if you slow your timing down and get that figured out, you can aim a little left or a little right and kind of try and stall your hand, and eventually you'll get a nice, accurate cast with a lot of practice. This rod makes it so much easier to do that. You come back, you come forward at your target, so does the fly. And then they made it 25% stronger than H3. I never broke an H3. I did slam a car door on an H3, but I never broke an H3 when I shouldn't have broken an H3. So you're fighting a fish down here at the butt to get it to turn out of a current and into softer water so you can land it, but then also protecting the tip so that you can lift 5x tippet and get a net under that fish. They improved that entire hoop strength through the rod. So they've also machined the fit of these pieces to within 1/1000th of an inch of tolerance. So not only is the rod stronger, but if you shut the tip in a car door or trip and break the butt section, you don't have to send the whole rod back and they won't send you a new rod. You tell them what you broke, and within 5 days, they send you the piece that you broke. Doesn't matter whose butt section this is, if you order this piece, it's gonna fit perfectly on there. That's never been done in the fly rod world yet. And then they made it thinner and lighter. And why does that matter? Well, right out of the tube, it just feels better. It's not so much the physical weight of the rod, but it's the ease of casting and where the trigger points in the cast are that release the energy toward the line. A lot of rods, if that's off, you'll feel it in your hand more, or, casting heavy stuff, you'll feel it up in your shoulders. But the way that they've mapped out the swing weight of this rod, there's just so much less fatigue in your hand. We run an operation with 5-day, 6-night fishing trip. After 5 days of fishing the wrong rod, you're gonna feel it in your hand or your shoulder or your back. This sucker is an effortless cast. And then the details. The details are just gorgeous. They softened the white patch to a muted tone. A lot of people didn't like the big blaze white patch here. They've grayed that down here and then muted the white up here. And then the whole rod, they went with a matte finish instead of those shiny lacquers. So on a sunny day, if you've got a big brown in shallow water and the sun glints off the fly rod as you're coming forward, he's gone. So I'm really glad they did that. They've added an anodized aluminum reel seat, burled hardwood, bendable recoil guides up here, which is really nice, especially in the winter when you're freezing up your guides all the time. You can just go up there and bend those suckers and break the ice out. They didn't leave anything out. And there are people hand tying the thread on this and then painting the lacquer on. This isn't just all machined. They're not just making these bold claims, lame claims, and then saying, we're gonna call it 4 times better and 25% stronger. They actually built machines to measure that. So they're not asking us, is this a more accurate rod? They're showing us how it is a more accurate rod. My buddy in college, we used to run the climbing gym, the rock climbing gym, and we were sitting on on crash pads one night talking about the ski industry. Everybody's got these different flexes of boots and flexes of skis. Salomon's claiming this is a stiff flexed ski, and Rossignol's over here saying, well, this is a mid flex to He went and designed a machine that will roll down to a tolerance, the flex of a ski, and quantified what those, subjective descriptions of the product mean. It had never been done in the ski world, and it was super helpful for all the companies. Orvis has now done that with fly rods. They can track and measure accuracy before we ever get it in our hand. It's gonna make my clients better fishermen and women. All right, so that's all well and good, but the real test is gonna be what Craig Phelan thinks. If this doesn't impress Dad, it's not worth my time, and it's definitely not worth yours. Let's go find him and see what he thinks of this sucker. So when you're testing out a new fly rod or practicing at home, you really need water to load the back cast. Gives the rod that nice flex to unfurl the line and then launch going forward. If you're just practicing on a parking lot or the lawn, you're having to work a little too hard to get it back. So I know if I bring Dad this beautiful new fly rod, he's gonna say, where are we going to cast it? The big hole's clearly out. Thank God we're finally getting winter. We had winter 2 weeks ago. It was like 43 below. And then it warmed up to like 50 degrees. Things were melting off, and now winter's back. Snow's starting to pile up in the mountains. We've got a lot of winter left for the mountains. High country gets snow all the way through May. And then last year we had rain all through June, but I think parking Dad out on a river today 28 degrees, a little bit of snow, a little bit of wind is not what he wants to do, knowing that in 2 months he'll have this rod, it'll be warm, we'll be on the Bitterroot fishing squallas. So I gotta find somewhere a little warmer for him, but I think I got a place. Can you believe that place just got bought by 2 rock stars? Tim Montana, who hangs out with like Charlie Sheen and Kid Rock, and Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top. And Rudy, you guys all know Rudy, he bought the H-Bar J. So the 2 bars in town. If you go out after 8 p.m., you've been forewarned.
Wow. Ooh. Well, my first impression of this rod is the rod's doing the work. Problem with a stiff tip is that you have to do a lot of work to get the line and the fly where you want it. Whereas a rod like this is doing all the work for you. I hardly did anything. It's almost like it's alive. And I had to make the first cast to load the rod, and the rod kind of took over from there and cast all by itself. It's the best rod I've ever put in my hand. This is beautiful. This is a trout fishing rod. You don't have to put as much effort casting this rod once you make your first or second cast. The rod literally casts by itself. So all you have to do is stop where you need to stop on the back cast and the forward cast, and the rod pretty well takes over from there.
Right, so Dad loved the rod. The question becomes, do you already have the fly rod that gives you that, man, I loved the feel of that cast and I want to do that again moment? Seriously, does your fly rod give you joy in the process of fishing? If not, the answer's pretty easy. Go invest in this fly rod, get to know it well through practice, and enjoy this sport more. And if you already do have a fly rod that you love and enjoy, like I have, can this fly rod make you enjoy that moment more? Does this rod make fishing more fun? I think so. And I'm more excited to go out and fish this spring as soon as things warm up than I have been in years. It's up to you. And you're never gonna know until you go out and cast this rod. But I don't want you to go listen to the talking heads or read the tech and just, you know, buy thinking this is gonna make you a better fisher, fly fisher. But I do want you to think about where you are with this sport and what can make what really matters to you in this sport. Is it just catching fish? And if that's the case, you know, I don't want to make the decision for you. I don't want you to make your decision off a bunch of techie stuff and good advertising. I want you to think about what, if anything, is missing in your experience of fishing, and know that Orvis built a fly rod here that makes casting a heck of a lot more fun, which I think will translate to better fishing and ultimately, you know, to more fish on the end of the line. And then what you do from there is up to you. You gotta play them correctly and land the fish. But if you haven't already, please check out bigholelodge.com. We still have some great weeks available this summer. It's finally snowing. Snow is piling up in the mountains, and we're looking forward to a great year. I'm gonna leave links below to the Helios 4, and I encourage you to reach out to me or my father with any questions you might have, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks, guys.